During closed, I have to read this to you folks, the governing board met in closed session from 6 to 7 tonight and took the following action. Under student matters, the governing board voted 5-0 to exempt a Half Moon Bay High School alternative education student from compulsory attendance. This student has successfully passed the California High School Proficiency Exam and would like to obtain a full-time job and attend community college in Vancouver, Washington. So we approve that and wish that student luck. All right, so we'll move along to the Pledge of Allegiance. I understand Tamlin's going to help us with that, so if she can come up to the mic, everybody can stand. The flag's just up here.
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, may I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented? Motion to approve? Oh. Second? All in favor? Aye. 5+0. Cesar's last votes. Savor them. All right. Okay, really fun part of the meeting. We're going to do staff and student community recognition. And we have some special people to recognize tonight. So, Jane.
So, Mr. John Nazar, would you please come forward? And Tamalyn Schaefer, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Ms. Tamalyn Schaefer, who is the valedictorian of the graduating class of Half Moon Bay High School. You're not going to believe what this young lady has already accomplished. Tamalyn has earned an A+ in almost every class she has taken at Half Moon Bay High School. She is an incredible member of the marching band, a superb vocalist who did an amazing rendition of the national anthem with her brother, Everett, when Mr. Nazar asked them to perform at No One Left Behind benefit golf tournament at the Half Moon Bay Golf Links to support firefighters who have contracted cancer. She has performed in the high school spring musical the past 2 years, was a founder and co-president of the Environmental Club, and is very passionate about environmentalism and sustainability. Tamalyn also organized an entire Earth Day event and created a series of activities for Earth Week. She was president of the Gender Sexuality Alliance Club and supports social justice and activism. Tamalyn was a founding member of the original Peer Helpers class and a leader in the Peer Helper school presentations. Most importantly, Tamalyn is an extremely kind, gracious, and thoughtful person. Tamalyn Schaefer will be attending the University of California at Berkeley next year, and we know she will make Half Moon Bay proud while she is at Cal. Congratulations, Tamalyn.
Tamalyn from the Cabrillo Unified School District. This is recognition by the governing board. Outstanding academic achievement, Half Moon Bay High School valedictorian 2017-2018, given the 7th day of June 2018, Half Moon Bay, California, signed by our superintendent, Jane Euster, and our board president, Rob Papalardo. We are very proud of you, and you have represented us so well, and I know it's going to be just an amazing graduation.
I actually asked how our valedictorian and salutatorians were calculated, because I'm old enough so that a 4.0 was like the valedictorian's grade point average. And I attended the award ceremony where they said, watch, we had 41 out of 238 graduates who are carrying weighted grade point averages greater than 4.0. Wow. We have a remarkable high school, an unbelievable group of kids here, and congratulations to the graduates of Half Moon Bay High School, and congratulations, Mr. Nazar, for running a great school. So 41 out of 238 weighted GPAs greater than 4.0. So imagine what these two beautiful women that we are speaking with now are salutatorian, and that is Sienna Henschelwood. So let me tell you about Sienna. Sienna has earned an A+ in almost every class that she has taken at Half Moon Bay High School. She was a valuable 4-year member as well as this year's captain of the varsity volleyball team, which was awesome, I might add. Sienna loves everything about art and is an outstanding and talented artist. She was vice president of the Gender Sexuality Alliance Club, a member of the National Honor Society and Interact clubs, and has participated in the school spring musicals. Sienna is most importantly one of the most kind and gentle students we have on our campus. She will be attending beautiful Scripps, oh what a great school this is, Scripps College in Claremont, California next year, and she will be studying history. Congratulations, Sienna.
Sienna, on behalf of the Cabrillo Unified School District, recognition by the governing board, Sienna Henschelwood, Outstanding Academic Achievement, Half Moon Bay High School Salutatorian, 2017-2018, given this 7th day of June 2018 in Half Moon Bay, California, and signed by our superintendent and governing board president. We are absolutely proud of you. You have just been an amazing young person, and I know during your speech at graduation, you're going to do us proud again. Congratulations. And I do need to say, and really to support what our superintendent just stated, that we have an absolutely outstanding high school. Not only do we have 41 of our students of the senior class of over a 4.0, but we have a student body that has excelled in every way, academically, athletically, and in the arts. But most importantly, and you heard in both of those little bios of our students, is the general atmosphere of kindness. Those of you who know Cesar and any one of our students, it is something that is prevalent, and I can say I am absolutely the most proud of that fact, and it's something that I think is unique, and I would put our students and our school up against any school in the state of California. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Before we mention the retirees, the board wants to say thank you to Cesar for his service on the board. He's done an outstanding job. Thank you so much. And we want to recognize that you're off to San Francisco State. And we have a little selection of fine items.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Also, on the cheer team, one of 17 athletes from our high school going to participate in athletics. So he's one of them. So congratulations again.
Way to go. Okay, Joy. Yeah, I did. So one of the other magnificent things about the district is our personnel. And tonight, it is with very great pleasure that we recognize our outstanding personnel, unfortunately, who are retiring and leaving us. Maybe we can reverse some of that stuff. But yes, we are recognizing our retirees this evening, and I'm going to read all of their names. And if you are here this evening, because I know some are and some aren't, if you would please come forward. We have both recognitions by the school board and by Kevin Mullen as well, so we're very pleased and delighted. One of our retirees, and I'm looking at her, Michelle, you were the last, so we don't quite have yours from we do? Oh, Mullen's office, never mind. Mullen's office came through, and they're wonderful. So this evening, we recognize Linda Souza with 32 years of service to the district. Sue Samsey with 19 years of service to our district. Ann Bailey with 26.5 years of service to our district. Yay! Meredith Raymond with 5 years of service to the district. Eugenie Kessler with 15 years of service to the district. Eugenie Kessler, I know. Karen Borges with 30 years of service. Okay, I don't want to mispronounce, I'm sorry. Ana Doria Casada with 15 years of service. And finally, there she is, all right? Perfect arrival. And finally, Michelle Oldman. Michelle, it goes so quick, how many years in the district? 26 years in the district. Congratulations. You have impacted generations of citizens in the United States. You have made our community and this coast a better place for your actions and contribution. May your retirements be glorious. May you take well-earned vacations. May your phones not ring at 4 o'clock in the morning with student stuff, but may you never forget us, and we will never forget you. Thank you. I have a comment, not on the board.
Okay.
So evidently my mouth is open a lot tonight. So it is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce you to some of the new executives for the district. So the first one is Jason Owen. He will be the new director of Pupil and Personnel Service. And then Seth, I would like you to introduce your new assistant principal, please. So this is Mr. Seth Feldman, the principal of Cunha Intermediate.
From there or there?
You're from right from where you are.
So
That's fine.
Seated next to me is our new vice principal with a strong background in behavioral support and special education. We're so happy to introduce Mr. Benjamin Bartel.
Mr. Porcel, would you please introduce your new assistant principal?
All right, so it's my pleasure I'm very happy and excited to introduce Ms. McVicker.
Oh, this is the principal of Hatch Elementary.
I'm very excited because we met already and her knowledge is amazing, so I'm very excited. Thank you.
And then Rick, our new director of technology is Rick Alva, who is joining us. Did I get it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, we fired 1, 2, 3, 4. I got everyone. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. All right, so we'll move on to number 10 on our agenda, representative reports. CUTA. Oh, Sean.
Well, disappointment, regret, loss. I'm not talking about Measure M because the official results are not till tomorrow. I'm talking about graduation. I'm talking about the myth that June is a time of joy and celebration entirely. Right? There is just as it is true that there is excitement every August, there is letdown every June. Right? Proud of my students, salutatorian, Sienna Henchelwood, my student for 2 years in the classroom, Tamlin Schaefer, daughter of one of my colleagues. So proud of these guys, but the letdown is still there. And how do we deal with these difficult feelings? Well, in my classroom and in my life, I turn to stories. So here's a story. We sailed in August And we sailed south to the South Seas. We weren't hunting whales, we were drawing them. And we left the South Seas and we sailed through the Straits of Malacca to trade spice, back to Shanghai to read the scholars' scrolls and look at the scholars' stones, all the while searching, loving, longing for home. Well, we're coming into port right now, and the feeling that no one wants to get off the ship is there. We built these strong bonds with our students. Well, I'm going to sail again in August, and I'll be sailing on the SS Half Moon Bay. Some are going to sail from SF State, from Berkeley, from Scripps. Some will sail again on a bond measure. But all of these adventures begin and they end. We just have to be ready to get back on the ship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. CSCA, is Diane here? Oh, no. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Thank you for your time. CSA just finished their last union meeting last night, and we are appreciative for all the support that the board does show our employees. We are having a rehire meeting on June 29th, and we do hope that the employees that did receive layoff notices will be welcome back to the district. We wish you all a very happy and restful summer.
Thank you so much. Thanks, all right, well, we will move on to reports, information, and presentations. And the first one, A, is we're going to receive a report about the Local Control Accountability Plan, also known as LCAP. Joy, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Move this. Good evening, Board President Papalardo and trustees of the board. It's my pleasure this evening to present to you the first draft of the 1819 Local Control Accountability Plan, as President Papalardo pointed out. It's also called the LCAP. In our district, we also refer to it as our Strategic Education Plan. And our Strategic Education Plan is really a plan that is for the success of all students. And in particular, we focus on English learners, which we refer to so often that we call them ELs in short. Also our socioeconomically disadvantaged students and our foster youth. Every time I come up to the podium, I talk about our district goals, and it's really reassuring sometimes when I talk to other people and they actually quote which goal is which, that they don't only know that we have 4 goals, but they know which one is related to which goal number. So I think that we're really doing a really great job with staying focused on these 4 main goals and communicating about them. And goal 1 is about literacy and English learner reclassification. Reclassification meaning that English learners who started out as learning English, students who are learning English, and then become reclassified as English proficient students. Goal 2 is about college and career readiness, which includes not just graduation, but also the students' preparedness across all content areas. Goal 3, which supports goal 1 and 2, is parent engagement, and goal 4 is about safety and school climate. And in our process of working on our local control accountability plan, it's a very cyclical process. So the current plan that we're implementing was approved last June in 2017 by the board. And we begin implementing it before the plan's actually adopted, because we start looking at hiring, we start looking at putting in services, and then once the plan's approved, we really start rolling in and think about how we need to revise those actions and services based on the reality of what's happening. One example of how actions and services can be adjusted through time in the implementation of a year is that, for example, we had several AVID sections that we were going to implement, but due to the reality of students who qualified for the advancement via individual determination courses, we reduced a section, even though within the plan we had more sections that were allocated. During the implementation of our actions and services, we also come to the board doing annual updates. I've done 2 updates to the board this year, one on goal 1 and 2, which focused on the academic aspect, and then another board presentation that focused on goal 3 and 4, which looks at the community engagement or parent engagement, and then also our safe and supported schools goal. We do these updates in addition to the board meetings, also at site meetings through school site council, and every year in January, Superintendent Euster and I get together and create a YouTube video, one in English and one in Spanish. Mr. Gaitan also helped with that this year, and then with the help of our entire team, we post it online and provide opportunities for people to get an update, but also to provide input. In addition to that technology way that we push out the information about our local control accountability plan and the way that we ask for input, we also have stakeholder engagement meetings. This year we had 40 stakeholder engagement meetings that range from probably about 5 to 40 participants at each meeting across each site. What we've done is we've wanted to make these meetings really meaningful, and that's why we have it at site-based meetings that already exist. So for example, at the school site council meetings that are already happening, we use one of the school site council meetings to provide an update on the LCAP and get input from those stakeholder groups, specifically at each site. And then we revise our goals, actions, and services, and that's the time period that we're in right now, in looking at how the implementations of services and actions actually happened, what were some of those revisions based on the reality of the situation. We look at the data that was presented at our annual updates to the board, and then we think about all of the many responses that we get during stakeholder engagement meetings, and we read every one of those meeting notes, and we participate in some of them also so that we can hear ourselves what those themes are, and we synthesize them into key areas that we heard across the community. With that, we created the new revision, the first draft of the Local Control Accountability Plan, which I'm presenting tonight, which is going to be presented to you at this public hearing also today, and then will be brought back again for board approval at the next June meeting. Just to let you know, this draft has already gone to the county, and the feedback from the county is really just consists of minor changes. So there were some inconsistencies in the document from one section to the next, or with the local control accountability plan last year. So they wanted us to make sure that all the numbers were aligned. So there are some things that you might see where we need to adjust some numbers, and things might have been formatted in a way that they wanted us to improve that formatting. But that's really great news, because there aren't major changes in terms of lack of compliance or lack of following major instructions about how to do it. So this is a pretty close to complete document as it is. So tonight's presentation is really going to be focused on the 4 goals, and each of the 4 goals I'm going to be walking through community input, the actions and services, and then the metrics. Metrics meaning the way that we're going to evaluate our progress in the 2018-2019 school year. So first, with goal 1, which is on literacy and English learner reclassification, I'm going to talk to you about our community input. What we heard from our community members through the variety of sources that we collected that information. And some of the key themes that we heard was this strong value of reading intervention, especially at the younger grades from TK through 3, and this real desire to have early reclassification. Many of the parents want, and also staff, really wanted to focus on how we can reclassify students as early as possible, optimally by 5th grade. There was a call for professional development and resources from parents and teachers, but specifically around English language development. And one of the things that we heard this year that was a little bit different than what we've heard in the past is this desire to have a better process of screening and support for literacy, specifically in this goal. You're going to hear this a lot, the idea about screening and support, which is going to be within each of these goals. How do we screen and support students in literacy, college and career readiness? How do we communicate with parents through parent engagement and communication? And then how do we build a whole system around screening and support, which fits into goal 4. In addition, we talked about smaller class sizes, or we heard about the value of smaller class sizes and technology-enhanced learning. In this specific context, what that means is looking at Lexia, RazKids, iReady, and different types of technology-based literacy support that parents really loved seeing at home, especially parents of English learners, because they were able to make sure that their student had access to a computer had time to be able to work on it, and they knew that their students were making progress even though those parents weren't able to give that specific language support themselves. With the community input, and the other information that we gathered throughout the year, we created our actions for 2018 and 19 for Goal 1 in literacy and English learner reclassification. Some of those things include the Common Core materials and instruction, and tonight being presented to you again for final approval is the Windows and Mirrors adoption for Acuna Intermediate School. And we, again, have this idea about the screening and data analysis, which we have here with assessment and data analysis that we want to continue to have specifically in literacy. Reduced class sizes and language options, which looks like the Spanish for Spanish speakers options at our secondary schools. Having small group and technology enhanced intervention. That includes both the reading intervention piece, but also that technology enhanced piece of Lexia, RazKids, and iReady. In addition, we want to continue to provide English language development support. That also means that next year we're really focusing on selecting and piloting English language development curriculum. As you've seen, we've been bringing forward a lot of adoptions because we need to get up to speed with the current standards. And next year, our large push is going to be around our English language development curriculum, piloting and adoption. And last but not least is the summer and after school intervention, which is already in place for this year, and we're already starting to plan some of the new programs for the 2019 school year. One of the new programs that we're bringing in for our summer intervention is a bridge program to support students who are moving from 5th grade into 6th grade and then from 8th grade into 9th grade. It's one of the things that we already have to start planning now because it takes that long to get the program in place for the following school year. In terms of metrics, we are staying consistent with most of our metrics. That's looking at our state assessment, the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, and within this goal, we're looking specifically at English language arts. Our local assessment that we use is our Fontes and Pinnell reading assessment in our elementary schools. We have our new English language proficiency assessments for California, which we call the LPAC. This is replacing the test that we used to call the CELT test, the California English Language Development Test. So this is the new CELT, as we say. And in terms of metrics, we're also looking at the percent of reclassified students in grades 5, 8, and 11. This is one of the metrics that I really appreciate because it shows us how we're actually making a change from the percent of English learners that when they were in kindergarten to how many students have been reclassified in that group of English learners. And I think that one of the most amazing statistics that I've seen through our LCAP process is that our group of 11th graders increased from 54% reclassified last year to 75%. And that's an increase of 21% of students that we're reclassifying. A lot of that is because we're really trying to look at the structure of the systems that we put in place, and we want to change the way that we're reclassifying students so that we provide alternative assessments and not keeping them so boxed in that it doesn't allow for variation with who students are and what their skill set is. The other really positive information and metrics that we have in this goal is our reclassification rate, which also increased from 8.9% or about 9% to 11%. So our reclassification rate has also increased. With that said, we know that there's a lot of areas of need that we need to continue to focus on, specifically with our standardized assessments and our Fontes and Pinnell reading assessments. And because we also want to start looking specifically at how we serve students with disabilities, that's one of the metrics that we're going to be adding to this section. And it hasn't been added in this draft, but it is another metric that we're going to be adding so that we can start tracking how we're serving our students with disabilities as well. Goal 2 is in college and career readiness. And again, I'm going to go through the community input, the actions and services, and the metrics within this goal. So these are the things that we heard from the community. They want to continue to have appropriately highly qualified faculty and staff. They really saw the effectiveness of advancement via individual determination, which we refer to as AVID. They also, going back again to this idea about wanting this process for screening at-risk students early on and providing timely support. It's a theme that we keep hearing over and over. and wanting to see student engagement through extracurricular activities and having mentors. And that's, again, where that bridge program idea came from. The idea that we want students to be able to connect early on and be able to have somebody that they could go to, systems in place, so that once they're in a school, they have a connection already and they're developing it early on. And then the next piece is more technology integration. We talked in Goal 1 about that technology integration with literacy. This is technology integration across the content areas. In looking at the actions under college and career readiness, we are going to continue to have appropriately qualified faculty and staff provide professional development and support across all content areas. And then as a part of our next steps in the math adoptions that we've had in the past year is to really implement and evaluate the math curriculum that we have across the district. As I had mentioned earlier that we're going to be adopting the CUNYA Windows and Mirrors programs, we are going to be also bringing forward today for your approval. That is the Bridges in Mathematics program for elementary. One of the other actions that we have is the expansion of advancement via individual determination programs. What this looks like is a portion of AVID, or an extension of AVID called AVID Excel, which is really to support long-term English learners. And we're going to continue to explore the possibility of AVID at the elementary level next year. Similar to Action 2, we also are expanding our look, or I should say deepening our focus on students with learning disabilities. So there are some new actions that have been added about how we're serving our students with disabilities. With that, we're going to be measuring our progress through metrics that are very similar to last year. We continue to see, similar to our English language arts scores in the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, which we call the CASP, that in math we also need to continue to have a sharper focus on how we're providing standards-based instruction for mathematics. The results that are shared within this LCAP were from the 2017 CASP, and that year was the year that CUNYA was the only school at that time that had already adopted their Common Core curriculum. Since then, the high school has adopted the Common Core curriculum, and by next year we should be implementing Common Core curriculum across the TK through 12 spectrum. We also are going to be looking at the A through G course completion rate. This is something that really helps us to understand not only the graduation rate of students, but how prepared they are in attending, to be able to attend a university. In our analysis of this, we know that students need additional support specifically, or that the areas that our graduates seem to need more attention in is English, mathematics, and also science. So this is one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on as a metric. We also are going to be looking at the availability and participation in college credit courses, participation in AVID, and then the percent of AVID college applicants. Similar to Goal 1, we're going to be adding, similar to Goal 1, we're going to be also adding a metric after this board meeting for students with disabilities, so that we can also focus on the progress of that subgroup. Goal 3 is on parent engagement, and this is one of my favorite ones because I think it's really fun. We're going to talk about our community input that we had around parent engagement, the actions and services, and then also the metrics. So what we heard from the community around parent engagement is that we wanted to have this continued outreach and support for Spanish-speaking families. They wanted to see more family engagement opportunities, technology as a tool for communication. And so, again, this one is not just about Lexia or Raz Kids. This isn't just about technology integration, but it's about how we're using technology, whether it's through robocalls, whether it's in emergency situations, whether it's classroom websites, how our school websites look like, and how we're using that as tools for communication. We also heard that a lot of families wanted more information about district services, programs, and opportunities through a variety of mediums. They didn't want just online notices or just in meetings, but they wanted to hear more about it in a variety of ways. The one that I really appreciated hearing the most about this year, because I had an opportunity to attend so many meetings, the one piece that really stuck with me is the idea about frequent and student-specific communication. Parents want to know about their child in a timely way. And again, this is about the screening and support that we offer for students. So number one, noticing we as schools need to understand when students are starting to become at risk, and then we need to also make sure that we're communicating with parents about that as soon as possible. But that is one comment that we heard across communities, that the frequent student-specific communication was essential, and one of the words that I heard, or the phrases that I heard, was before it's too late. And that sticks with me because I think it's really important that we figure out what that too late time is, and then step back, a year or three, and figure out how do we start to avoid that too late time by figuring out the screening, the support, and then the communication as a whole. So in looking at those actions for 2018 and 19, we're looking currently at possible new website platforms and how we can better use technology as an avenue for communication. With this, I'm going to just also put a caveat that we understand that technology being there for communication isn't enough, that we actually have to be clear about our messages and make sure that we're clear about the messages that we're putting out through that technology. We also are going to be participating in the Family Engagement Institute for another year. This year we had 3 schools that participated in it, and the remaining 4 schools in our district will be participating in the Family Engagement Institute that focuses on bringing together the staff and the families around student learning and ways that parents can support their children at home. We also have district and site-based family engagement and wellness services across the district. This year we had some really interesting wellness service community events at the high school as well as at Cunha. We're going to continue having district surveys so that we can better understand, not just one time a year, but throughout the year, what parents and students are thinking about. And one of the things we're adding this year are these advisory committees. The advisory committees that we're looking at are going to be around safety, communication, instruction, and special education. These areas were chosen because we saw, as you will see in the community input and in our experience this year, that there are 3 areas or 4 areas that we continue to need to work on, and we'll work better as a team when we as a school district are partnering with families so that we better understand how all of us can work together by sharing what our needs are and then moving toward actions. So the metrics that we're looking at in parent engagement include parent participation in site-based decision-making committees. This means specifically school site councils and our superintendent PAC meetings. We actually increased the percent of our unduplicated pupils, families, that is, in both school site councils and the superintendent PAC meeting. What that means is that when you look at a school site council, and we look at who the parents are who are participating in it, or who are the parents who are participating on the superintendent PAC, Parent Advisory Committee, it means that that percentage has increased of parents who are parents of English learners, of socioeconomically disadvantaged students, or foster youth. And it's very important for us not only to have parents sign in and do that, but actually to be part of our decision making at our sites. So that's why that is a specific metric that we use to measure how we're being inclusive in our decision making. We also are going to continue to look at the participation in our climate survey, and specifically within that, our parent engagement score and barriers to engagement. One thing I'm going to tell you about this is that we had an increase in participation this year in our climate survey for parents. The difference is that the shifting population of participants went from elementary to high school. Might have been because of the way that we communicated out with parents. I know that the high school did a really big push and then ended up increasing the percent of parents of the whole group being high school represented. We understand that when we look at parent engagement and barriers to engagement scores, because the parent engagement score went down. But if you think about how parents are engaged in high school, it's very different than kindergarten. One of the questions is, how often have you spoken with your child's teacher in the past whatever? Kindergarten every day, maybe once a week, at least once a month, and at high school, the expectation really shifts. So we understand that. One of the things that we want to do to change that is actually provide these climate surveys later in the year. Instead of it being in October, November, we want to move it to January. It'll give everybody, especially those incoming K parents and those incoming 6th grade parents, incoming 9th grade parents, an opportunity to just settle into the school before they start answering surveys about the school, right? So I think that it'll help us clean up the data a little bit, and it'll help us by providing more opportunities for people to actually experience the school before we ask them to rate us on a schedule or scale. And then the other metric that we're using is the number of parent outreach events. Our goal was to increase it, but really so many of our schools, especially the ones that were participating in our Family Engagement Institute, increased their parent engagement events significantly. And that's just really exciting to see how not only parent events, but really specific events about student learning have been created, and that if you look at each of those events through time, that there's increased participation across the community in those events. So looking at goal 4, again, community input, actions and services and metrics. We'll start with community input. Goal 4 is about safety and school climate. And when we talk to families about safety and school climate, these are some of the key things that we heard. They wanted expanded wellness services, not just for kids, but also for families. They wanted more opportunities for after-school enrichment and intervention. So both sides. They wanted the enrichment piece, but they also wanted more after-school support. One of the things that we didn't hear about as much last year, but we heard a little bit more this year, was the idea about concerns about bullying and safety. And that's one of the reasons why in that parent engagement section, we wanted to make sure that safety was one of the pieces that we're focusing on a little bit more. And again, this idea keeps coming back. Supports for at-risk students through early intervention. And that's, again, the piece of screening students early, finding out who they are, and providing those supports early on, which is the last bullet that I have there. So the actions that we want to take includes the basics: maintaining facilities, monitoring student progress, and improving multi-tiered systems of support, which we call MTSS. And I think that something that has an acronym deserves to be explained a little bit more, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to just really focus. This is my biggest new teaching today on here. So ready, multi-tiered systems of support. The basic idea is that you have different tiers. The base tier is for all students. The second tier is for select students. It tends to be short-term support. And then the top tier is for individualized support, and it tends to be long-term. So it's about having these different layers of support, understanding what are the things that all students need, what some students need, and then what are the individualized supports that students need. It includes an academic side and a behavioral side. And then, that's just the start, it's wrapped up all around with this idea about the supports. So that's the multi-tiered system. The supports around it are about how we screen, how we evaluate, how we move students, how we provide professional development, how we engage communities, and how we make sure that our policies are aligned, our local control accountability plan is aligned, so that students can be supported within that system. If you'd like, I can give you a much longer presentation on that, but that's a gist of what that means. And I think that the reason why we're choosing to name it as such, number one, it's a common name within education, but also because when you hear what we're hearing from parents and you see what we're seeing in terms of the results of the metrics and the assessments that we're using, we need to have a system, and not just small pieces of a system, but a whole system, and we need to name the system and talk about it and build it so that all students can be successful within it. So in addition to that large idea that we're going to start developing, we're also going to continue our attendance and truancy practices and protocols, wellness services and academic counseling, transportation for at-risk students, and then again, we're going to talk a little bit more about our education services for students with disabilities. Our metrics in this area are going to include our Williams Act compliance. That's very much linked to the facilities and making sure that we have compliance with teaching staff and then the materials that we use. our attendance rate, chronic absence, truancy, suspension and expulsion, dropout rate, graduation rates. One piece that we are going to be adding and tweaking just a little bit is, again, making sure that we're measuring how we're serving students with learning disabilities. So we're going to be adding a metric in this section specifically about the graduation rate and how our students with disabilities are graduating. So, with that said, before I open it for any questions, because I'm guessing there will be questions, I want to just thank the people, first of all, who helped to create this plan, first of all, to the board for approving it and providing support throughout the year and guidance. I know that while this is the official plan that's been written, I've had many conversations throughout the year about different aspects of this plan, and those conversations have helped lead to what this plan is. I also want to acknowledge Crystal, our Chief Business Officer, for providing really accurate financial details linked to the larger financial picture of the district, which I know she'll be presenting later, and also Superintendent Euster for her vision, because that's how we created this. I appreciate when Superintendent Euster came to the district, she really changed the LCAP so that it focused around the 4 major goals. And when she came in and did that and created those 4 goals around literacy and reclassification, college and career readiness, family engagement, and safe and supported schools, I felt this sigh of relief, like we are actually on the right path now. We have these 4 buckets that we can name, talk about, and now link everything to. So I really thank Superintendent Euster for that. And the last person I'm going to thank, who's one of my direct reports, so she has seen me in all states of franticness and calm. It's Ann Bailey, who is retiring and probably very glad that this is the last LCAP she will ever have to work on ever, because I can tell you that she has provided amazing, responsive, consistent support, not only to me, but to the rest of the district. And the detail that goes into this document, especially with the data digging, I can go to Ann and say, Ann, I really want to understand the A through G requirements and I don't really get it, so can you pull up how many graduates were missing the A to G requirement, XYZ? Or can you look up at the panorama data and help me dig out XYZ? And she'll look at it, analyze it, provide me some information, and then when I say, okay, well, I want to know more, she's always there, ready to dig a little bit deeper. And I just appreciate having had her as an amazing think partner, a really amazing cog in the big wheel that we all work in sometimes, because we can only spin as fast as the other people who are helping us to move can do. So I too am a cog. But I think that I just wanted to take this opportunity to appreciate Ann, because I think she's just an amazing colleague and has always been so, even when I was not her boss and I was a teacher, a mere teacher in the district. So I'm going to give her a round of applause for myself. And with that, questions?
First of all, the amount of work that has gone into this, and it's clearly a continual, ongoing basis, is truly astounding and phenomenal. And thank you so much for your leadership of the many, 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 many people that were involved in doing that. So first, thank you so much. This is a tremendous plan. I think, again, being able to look to 4 main comprehensible pillars that resonate, I think is truly helpful for everybody. If we were to take a step back even farther up and think about what's our vision, what's our goal, what are we trying to achieve at the end of the day with these 4 goals? What does a student look like at the end of the day? Can you speak a little bit to kind of the higher level, what's our product here, right? If we were to kind of think of it that way.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we think about often, and I think one of the things I really appreciate about the goals is that they help us to think about what we need to do in order to achieve that. In looking at that, I think making sure that students have that ability going with goal 1 and 2, what are we trying to accomplish with goal 1 and 2, is making sure that students have the ability to think critically, interact with information across all content areas, and then to be able to tackle new things on their own independently with a strong foundation of that literacy, college, and career readiness. When we look at goal 3, I think a lot of it is how do we help to engage those families and so that we can improve ourselves also, and so that we could support students, because we know that they're not just individuals who are walking around in the world, but that even when they leave us, they're going to need to rely on their families. And so helping to inform those families so that they can walk with their students in that type of support. And then I think that the other piece too is the idea about the safe and supported schools. Because I think as we see our children get older, one of the big challenges is how are they developing resilience? How are they making safe decisions? Because you can be able to answer tests and you may be able to call your parents whenever you need help, but how do you develop that resiliency and that independence? I think that going back to the parent engagement, I think that we call it parent engagement or family engagement, but I think that our district really does something more than that. I think it's about community engagement, and I think that's the other piece that I think is our goal, is how are we modeling also for our students the idea that we aren't just individuals, but we're a community that comes together, even in tough times. So,
I think we've had some conversations previously about like the whole child and making sure we're looking at the kids from the previous kind of historical educational model of educating kids academically, and Mr. Nazar for sure, and others always speak about like the triumvirate of aspects of education that we're trying to instill in our kids, and social emotional learning being a big part of it. So to that end, I'm wondering, and I know, I'm aware where there's a lot that we're doing on that front too, not only social emotionally, but also with regards to the arts and with regards to athletics. So I guess I'm curious, like, do we capture that in the LCAP, or should we capture that in the LCAP? Because I feel like those are really important efforts. All that work that you showed us that's going on recently about the arts and performing arts as well, super awesome. And I feel like that feeds into a lot of what you describe right now in terms of like that well-rounded student. Things like looking at the master schedules continually optimizing to figure out how do we get not only our students but our teachers be able to be in an environment where they're not rushing unnecessarily, right? The changes we made at the high school, for example, and I realize that's in the past, but I also where like we're always looking at these like kind of baseline, how do we manage things? To what extent like are those things that we want to highlight and to really pull out here? Because from my perspective, when we're looking at what we're trying to deliver at the end of the day, those are really essential components. So I guess I'll throw that to you and see what you think.
Well, I mean, I think that I wish I brought a pen with me. Sorry, let me just write that down, because this is a public hearing and it will be open to public hearing. So I think one of the things is there are parts of the LCAP that include these key ideas, but to what extent do we write it out in detail? I think that that's one of the things that we struggle with, because one of the things that I look at is we need to be very strategic with how we develop the core. And when I say core, I don't mean language arts and math. I mean, what are the core services that no matter what happens, we're going to protect? And that's very hard to really figure out what that core is. And when we have that core established, then we can build around that. And I think that right now, as it's integrated, we have a lot of different aspects that we're exploring and trying to figure out whether it's music or how other types of things are integrated into the local control accountability plan. I think that that's something that we can always improve on in being more descriptive of it. So.
Joe, you talked about the reclassification and the nice gains we made in 11th grade testing, so that was good to hear. And you also mentioned a bit about the different methodologies of assessing and mapping to the requirements of the specific students. So if you comment on that a bit as well, and then just more broadly, I know we need to do a better job around communicating to parents and students as well, a bit about how do they get reclassified and what that process is. So can you comment on both parts of that?
Okay, so first of all, with how the way that we reclassify students, how that's changed. First of all, we used to have the CST, the California Standards Test, and we have it only at certain grade levels. And then we would pair that with our CELT scores, the English test that we would use. And then we had really strict criteria. If they didn't meet proficient, then they just weren't reclassified. And we realized that if we look at our English-only students, not every English-only student who's doing well in their variety of classes is meeting proficient on the CST. So we need to change the way that we're looking at that. Since that time, we now have a new assessment. We don't have the CST, we have the CASP. And then with the CELT test, now we have the LPAC, which we discussed earlier. And so even with that, we need to start thinking about how are we looking at those assessments in a way that allows for a little bit more variability. Instead of it being you must be proficient, maybe it's you need to be near standard and have other criteria that shows that you're strong, like you also have grades that show that you are doing okay in English language arts and some of your key subject areas. And then that paired with something else, teacher recommendation, parents, we can say that with all this information, we actually think that you're performing similar to how an English-only student is performing. And we're not holding you to another standard of proficiency that even their English-only peers are not making yet. Yet those English-only peers are having full access to a range of classes and are doing okay. They're getting C's, B's, and they're doing okay, yet they are not proficient on the CASP test or whatever state test at the time period was. The other thing that we did was we really saw a lot of collaboration between Irene Preciado, who's our Director of Categorical Programs, and Meredith, who was here earlier, and then now Holly Wade, in looking at how do we understand the reclassifications of students with learning disabilities. So that was another thing that we really tackled in thinking about how can we do this in a way that, again, takes the individualness of each child, considers what their needs are, and in this particular case, what their disabilities are, and then make a determination as a team to the appropriateness of their reclassification. So providing avenues aside from the strict guidelines that we used to have, I think is the just and fair way to do it. And that's why we've moved in that direction.
And we have that latitude within the district to make
Yes,
those
we
calls
do.
on our own reclassification process.
Yes,
Okay.
and your other question was about how we communicate with parents.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we've done is that we've recreated this, or we've revised the reclassification process. And in doing that, there's been information that's gone out to the community, whether it's through their English Learner Advisory Committees or through the district English Learner Advisory Committees, or even from teacher to parent during parent conferences, and then also most recently at a reclassification ceremony where the criteria is written. Even with that, what we hear is that parents say, I don't know what reclassification is, I don't understand the criteria, can you tell me more about it? So what we know is that we need to not just communicate it once, we need to communicate it twice, communicate it through different mediums, over-communicate it, and then really make sure that we continue to communicate around that on a regular basis.
Would that be part of in elementary, the teacher-parent conferences that discuss explicitly?
They do talk about reclassification, but I think that one of the things that we're talking about in this idea about how do we communicate before it's too late is that making sure that it's not just by the decision of the teacher, oh, let me talk about it now, but how are we creating a system, a whole system of supports in place where the expectation is shared, and it's not just because one person thinks that this student may need that conversation, but that we're having it more systemically. And I'm going to defer to Superintendent Booster.
We are also creating a series of parent guides, which in very clear and concise language, no edu-speak allowed, and no initials. No MTSS,
Not yet.
no nothing. Clearly state why is your kid even getting this label? Because that's the first, we also heard, I don't even get this label. What is this? Why? What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of supports and positive things? And then exactly what does it take for your student to come into this full status as what we call a reclassified fluent English proficient student. And then the benchmarks along the way. So as a parent, you should look for this. You should look for this. If you're not getting this, this is what you should do. So a very clear roadmap for a parent on exactly what this is.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, is it clearly communicated the restrictions and eligibility? That if you haven't been reclassified, you can't do this, your child's not eligible to take this set of courses, this kind of thing?
So
Is that clear that you can't wait on this? You know, there's an urgency because this is the timing so that to make sure you have the greatest access.
So when I think
Change the
about
target, maybe.
when I think about clear communication, has it been communicated clearly? I think that it's been communicated. I mean, it's been spoken. I've been at meetings and I've heard this. I've heard this many times, but how can we communicate it better? Because I've heard even from parents that they don't even remember hearing about reclassification, let alone what the implications of not reclassifying at a certain time are. So part of it is that we have new parents that come in every single year, and when we look at an English Learner Advisory Committee meeting, we may have, let's say, somewhere between 20, I'll say 5 to 10, some, on the low end, up to maybe 50 to 60 people at any one time. Yet that is only a portion of the population. So how are we making sure that all parents are getting that information also? But definitely it is something that has been talked about and shared, the idea that without early reclassification, and that's why I think it was one of the things we're hearing in the parent engagement or the community input, is that reclassification and early reclassification is important because it provides opportunities. And it's not just about the fact that they haven't been reclassified, it's that even if they had the opportunity to go to biology, for example, the level of vocabulary necessary in biology is very challenging. So it's not just about the reclassification, it's the skills necessary to be reclassified that's going to provide them with that success. And biology is one of the hardest, in doing the analysis of our A through G requirements, biology and chemistry are really challenging. Biology because of the vocabulary, chemistry because of the math. And making sure that students are prepared in both of those areas when they tackle those is really important.
Right, so it's not a label. It's an enabling process that is critical to the trajectory of a student. And I don't know that that's clear, and I'm not saying you're not communicating well, but I think that's something to figure out how to make that as clear as possible, so that, because I think there's a pejorative sense from reclassification, non-reclassification that takes a while for people. First of all, that hurts. Wait, to say my child isn't there yet, but they need to understand why, and not because you've intended to be pejorative, but they say that, well, they can't get this, so how can they get this? And it does matter if it takes a long time for this to happen. We know that, and the parents should really know that there's an urgency in that. And that's why we're redoubling our efforts to try to change that. And I have other questions, but I just had to ask about that one, so sorry.
So when you're doing the statistics and you talk about all students and then you have the subcategories, so for example, math, does the percentage or whatever that score is for all students also include all of those subcategories?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I found probably a couple of typos that you've already heard about, but I'll double check with you.
Feel free to send me them.
I do appreciate the enormous effort that this LCAP represents, because that's intensive amount of time and so many conversations. And as I read it, and I listen to your goals, I really appreciate what you just said a few minutes ago about understanding our core and trying to figure out that language. When I read the LCAP and I see so many metrics around the language acquisition and community engagement, I know all of these are absolutely critical, and I know what a beautiful job this district does in serving a wide range of students, and that it provides opportunities for kids to become engaged and to be well-rounded, grounded, kind kids when they graduate. And as I read it, I don't necessarily see the language that captures that. If we as a district are using this as our strategic plan, I don't see those other pieces. And I'm not trying to like shove everything in here, because I appreciate the level of effort and how much work and care went into it. But I'm a little bit concerned because, you know, in terms of all students reaching their academic potential, or student engagement, just some of those kernels or those nuggets that flesh out kind of the vision for all of our students. So, and again, I don't have the answer, but I'm just kind of struggling with.
If I can add to that too, I think that was my thinking in raising kind of this stuff. Like, I know we're doing it. Like, we're doing so much of this, like constantly trying to make things smoother and better, like even in those small ways. I know we're doing a lot around social emotional supports and work, and I don't know if PBIS is covered within the multi-tiered support thing, but like that's a big thing. But like I think these, you know, the arts, inclusion as well, like I feel like is such an essential component of the school climate. Like, can we somehow work that word in there somehow to just somehow reflect? There's a lot going on. I mean, every conversation that I've seen every principal have, or every teacher have, like we're constantly, it's almost like, you know, we've talked before about mind shifts. Like, what are the mind shifts we're trying to do? And I get that there's legal requirements around the LCAP, and I get like there's formulas, like templates, and like hundreds and hundreds of pages and all that kind of stuff. But I think if we go through that tremendous effort without like summarizing all the stuff that's actually happening, that really is the gist of what like families want for their students, we're missing the opportunity to really like brag about what's going on out there, right? Like all the efforts Mr. Nazar getting out there every day and fostering, you know, kindness, work hard every single day, right? You know, the parenting workshops that have been at Hatch, all the work, you know, at all our schools, to really foster that, like, that bigger picture feeling of like we're one community here, right? All the ELACs and all the work everyone's doing, you know, Mr. Gaitan and others around, like, you know, he's at Moonridge all the time. Like, you probably have an office there by now, right? Like, there's so much work going on. I feel like, you know, to your point, like, oh, well, I'd love to see that here so we can really, like, show it. And again, I don't know, like, I can work at that more at this level of like your bullet points here than the detail, and I get that like the detail has to have certain things and certain criteria, what's in the tables, but just think about like how we identify our strategic plan. I think those are a couple key components. Would be, you know, great to really have more visible. It's the well-rounded options for engagement, not only the academics but the arts and the athletics. It's all our efforts around inclusion, and again, I know that's sometimes hard to have tactics, but even like how we all do our jobs every day, that's inclusion, right? It's the I don't know. So so again, I don't have the answer either, but it's more like, can we somehow capture these things that, like, I know that's almost like the bread and butter, what people are working so hard into the night for.
So LCAP does specifically address our at-risk population, and that's really the purpose. So I understand that, and just looking up other LCAPs, I've noticed where they pointed to a strategic plan, or they pointed to a few other items. So it doesn't have to be a full-blown metrics kind of thing. But my last question, because I realize how long and tedious putting together this much data can be. What is your reaction to the level of effort required to create this document?
So I think that for me, I feel honored to be able to even write it. I'm just glad that Superintendent Euster trusts me with this because I love it. I think that it does take a lot of effort, but to me the effort's really in talking to people and listening and synthesizing what I see that's happening through data, that's happening through conversations of community involvement or talking with teachers, and then also what we notice about the implementation and actions. It's really hard to remember everything because by the end, I mean, I was still marking with highlighter right before I came up here because it's hard to remember everything. If I read it and then I stop looking at it, I don't remember the small percentages. But I can tell you that one of the challenges of this particular LCAP, and I'll go back to what you were just talking about a little earlier, is that it's year 2 of a 3-year document, and you probably noticed that. So I thought we would have a little bit more room to change, and the formatting, I know it's silly that I get down to formatting, but the formatting required to make any changes in the metrics or actions and services was a little bit more than I wanted to handle. And so what we did was we made a couple of changes, which I had mentioned. Also, Holly Wade had also added several actions that weren't there in the past year that specifically are around inclusion and students with disabilities. And I think that what I like to do is I like to add things slowly because every single square or rectangle that says an action requires probably 100 hours of work. And we're not increasing who in most situations. So even that one square that says we're going to strategically screen and support services is me writing my own job description for next year. So I think that with that, I want to explain why we're moving kind of slowly with how we layer things on. And I think that the level of the metrics, I think it's a little intense, and I don't think other people have metrics like ours. And when we have an opportunity to do a greater revision of it, I think I would like to rethink how we're reporting on our metrics. But with that said, I think that the activity of looking at it per grade level and per subgroup really shines a lot of light that we wouldn't see normally, and shouldn't we be doing that anyway? So I think that it really helps me to better understand, but it is a lot of work, and that's why I've given so much thanks to Anne, because this would not have been possible without Anne Bailey, Anne Barretto, Josefina, and Funson as my people who would put up with every request that I had just to get this done. But I think that in terms of the other things that you were talking about, how are we going to include all these other pieces? How are we going to communicate about the good things that we're doing? How are we going to plan about it? We can still plan, we can still have those things, and we can still communicate about it, but we could put it in here, and I think that it doesn't also have to be in this particular document that is approved by the state. I will think about it and see where we can include it, but one of the things that we're already working on the side is thinking about how we're communicating in general about the good things that we're doing. And one of the things I loved about coming up and doing the visual and performing arts presentation is that I know that we're not talking about the amazing programs we have enough. So we need to look at that with our communication plan in general and say, how are we making sure that we're clear about our messaging, that we know what are those key highlights that we want to explain every year, and these expectations of how we get that out. What are the different media outlets that we want to ensure that we're communicating those through? So I think that communication and how we communicate the good things we're doing, how do we continue to plan and have the robust programs that we have that aren't just the ones that are related to this, are things that we definitely continue to think about.
Yeah, one option could be that distinction between the strategic education plan and the LCAP, which is more the legal document that's required as well. So if there's an opportunity in the rollout of our strategic education plan, which could also include the LCAP and general management activities, that are ongoing around inclusion and things like that, that might be a way to facilitate in a clean way, kind of the add-on layer, which is kind of the bread and the butter, and really the general management stuff that happens that is, it is really terrific and makes a big difference, and could in some cases avoid needing to add on another program or something like that. And I think we've seen a lot of changes. Again, I always point to the block schedule change at the high schools like a perfect example. It doesn't cost anything other than the change itself. That we can catch that maybe in the rollout.
And I think one other thing I'll say is that there's some things that should be at a district document, but things like, for example, the changes in the high school, there are changes that we can make at different levels that doesn't have to be at this high level. We have site level changes. that we can also do, or grade level wide changes. And so I think that I was going to joke and say, well, we could create an LCAP addendum, but now we're actually required to have an LCAP addendum that includes title funds. That's going to be due on August 15th, which I'll be presenting probably August 7th. So we do have a new LCAP addendum that has never been asked for before, so I'll be presenting that also. That'll be fun. More work.
So, real quick, a little bit of a follow-up on the conversation we've had so far. One, thank you very much, all of you, for the hard work that goes into this. And I do think that the community input part of it is a really exciting part of it. And that's changed the way we've structured these programs over the last couple of years. So I know it takes a lot of work, though, to go out and have all the meetings and hear that input, but I do think it's an important part. And it sounds like you've enjoyed hearing it and reacting to it as well. So that's really great. So the two parts that kind of piggyback on what Kim and Sophia have been saying, in both Goal 2 and in Goal 4, in the community input, there's mention of enrichment, after-school enrichment and mentors. And at one point you talked in the past, I don't know if it was one of the presentations on one of the goals, about doing kind of an assessment of what kinds of enrichment opportunities we had. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that, because I think that is one part of the community input that has not yet been captured in the actions, and that goes to the type of stuff that you're talking about, the extracurricular, the after-school enrichment, the music, the athletics, the other stuff that help to make kids motivated and excited and to reach these end goals. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up in terms of hopefully at some point we can have some assessment. Maybe it's then when we recraft the LCAP goals, that could become a part of one of the goals or other things. But
So a couple of things. One is just going back to the community engagement, since you brought it up. One thing that I want to just add that we want to change for next year is adding another question specifically on this topic, which is student engagement. So we want to ask the community, what are the things that we need to do better to engage students? And I think with that data, we're going to be able to hone in a little bit more about the areas that we need to improve in. But in terms of the enrichment opportunities, I think that this goes back to the core idea. And when I said core, it wasn't just ELA, math, and these other things that are really obvious, but we do have a lot of changes with staffing, with how we schedule courses, what courses are even available. And so one of the things that we need to do is take a look at that. So I think we definitely want to look at the way that we're structuring enrichment across the district and what we even consider enrichment. So I appreciate that.
and then the second was the multi-tiered, what is it, systems?
Yes.
System of support. I just had a quick question. Thank you for explaining it, because it was a new term in this LCAP. But also wondering, and you mentioned PBIS, so I was going to ask about whether or not that's incorporated as part of it. And then we've also in the past talked about RTI, or response to intervention. Is this taking over that, or is that a part of it? So I just kind of was trying to get or maybe we just need to talk about later.
No, this is amazing. Freya, you were really paying attention. So that's amazing. I love it. No, so
I hope
the
it's
tiers.
not amazing anymore that I was really paying
no,
attention,
here's the
but-
great thing. So this is the thing. So multi-tiered systems of support. There's that first layer we call tier 1, all students, and then that second layer of some students, short term, and then top layer being more individualized support, possibly more longer term. And so I mentioned that there's those two sides of it. One is the behavioral side, and the other one's the academic side. So in the way they used to be referred to, these two sides, was more, kind of how are we structuring that positive behaviors, interventions, and support. So that's actually half of this pie that I'm
So it
talking
is a
about.
part of
cake.
it, okay.
It's part of it, and then the other half is response to intervention, which is the academic side. So it's actually
So you're building on those two, trying to
bringing
combine
those two
them.
things, combining them into one, and then creating those structures and supports of assessment, professional development, community engagement, policies and procedures that help keep it all together and helps us to see how students move within the system. Because going back to, again, what everyone's asking about is how are we screening and how are we supporting as early as possible. And we recognize that that's such a major challenge that we have.
And just to follow up on that, and I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but it sounds like it'll be interesting to look in the next year at that in relation to data, and you mentioned that already. And I've always kind of questioned our data, and when we look at CAST versus Fontes and Pinnell, and what's the most effective and what's the easiest for both for teachers, for students, and then for parents to understand. So it sounds like that will all kind of come into maybe some of the screening stuff, so that we can have an easier way of assessing that and maybe more accurate and then timely, so that we can intervene when we need to. So, great.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I have two more questions. Do you have another one? Or you go first.
Thanks. MTSS is, if you compare that to LCAP, is one a fabric and one a framework, and which is which?
So that's a really interesting question. I never thought of it in that way.
You can think about it and answer it later.
So there's actually a graphic I could share with you that brings those two together that I just presented to the principals and the administrative leadership team that has the LCAP and MTSS lined up, and I can share that with you once I sit down, actually, later on after the meeting. But basically the key things that MTSS is looking at is that academic piece, as we call it, goal 1 and 2. And then it's also looking at the behavioral side, which we refer to as goal 3. And then it has that community engagement part, which is goal 3. Safe and supported schools is goal 4. And then in addition to all of that, it has all those structures and support. So it's very much aligned with the LCAP. With that said, there are things in our LCAP that aren't completely related to MTSS, and our MTSS structures are not yet developed in a way as strategically as the LCAP is yet. We are going to be participating in an initiative that's statewide, and our district was selected, and thank you to Holly Wade, she helped with that grant to make sure that we were able to participate in that. And so we're going to be bringing a team to actually get support at the state level to work specifically on the multi-tiered systems of support. But it is closely related to the goals of our LCAP, but the details of it might look different until we align them better.
I really appreciate the conversation about the strategies and how they're interlaced with the metrics. It's a very clear presentation, and it thrills me to know that there's that level of thought, that depth of thought, going through how we're teaching kids. I mean, this is great to have this discussion. We haven't had this discussion, so marvelous. One little tiny question, that is, if you could share what is the most what's new in terms of the type of professional development that teachers are requesting vis-a-vis the LCAP?
So what is new in terms of the types of professional development that teachers are requesting? I would say it's not necessarily new. It's not the new content, it's the how. And making sure that we're more personalized to the needs of teachers. And I think that that's one of the things that we're really working on. Next year, we're going to be, at elementary at least, rolling out new math curriculum. So a lot of the curriculum or professional development is related to that. But I think that the idea about how we support teachers in professional development, or how we support staff even with paraprofessionals and administrators, is looking at the how we develop, how we provide professional development, and then how we assess that professional development, more so than just the content and how it's actually done.
2 questions.
Yes.
2 more questions, sorry. This is I think one of the more important discussions we have all year, so thank you again for indulging us in our many questions and queries and comments. One very kind of simple one, and I don't know if you have these numbers on the top of your head, because I know there's like probably 1 billion there right now. But can you give a sense of how many meetings or how many unique participants we've had in this community engagement process, knowing that this was a formal, discrete process that you structured that I know took a tremendous amount of work, but there's also all these other inputs along the way, that come through that. But if we were to say how many people formally participated through this process, or how many meetings were there, do you have a sense of that?
So if you're just talking specifically about the site-based meetings and the district-based meetings that were, quote, local control accountability plan meetings, where it was presented in that way. We had the online versions in English and Spanish, and then had a survey in English and Spanish that was provided. There were 22 respondents that went through the online version of it. We had a total of 39 meetings, and that ranged in participants from about 5 to about 40. They weren't all unique participants, so some had attended multiple meetings, so I haven't counted the individuals, and we didn't require sign-in sheets to be turned in, or numbers of participants, but I can tell you it was somewhere between 5 to 40. Let's say on average 20 times 40.
Yeah.
So
probably upwards of at least 100 people.
I'd say definitely more than that, for sure.
So
yes.
Hundreds, early few hundreds.
Yes.
Okay. No, that's good. Just in terms of things magnitude of scale, the precise number doesn't matter, but just think probably about 100, 200.
I was estimating more like 300 when I was considering it in my head with that. And then in addition to that, we also had our panorama surveys where we also collected additional information.
Yeah, and it was really a remarkable thing. It's been remarkable to watch us as we grow through the process. So it's our 3rd year of doing this, and each year we've had more and more people And
That's huge.
this year, not only more people, but the level, just from my own, I mean, I was at a few, but of course I have the superintendent's parent advisory committee. There were 35 to 40 people in this room from all schools, all Spanish native speakers, non-native speakers, all special education parents, all groups here. And it was really, we went for more than 2 hours in conversation about the school district and what they liked, what they didn't like, and how we could serve them better. So it's a conversation, frankly, we couldn't have had 2 years ago. So I'm extremely pleased that people felt safe enough that and felt that their opinions mattered enough, that the district was willing to listen to them. And it was great. It was a lot of fun.
That's good for our metrics for parent engagement, that right there, right?
Yeah, it was great.
And my last question, I promise. Again, going back up to the 30,000-foot view and thinking about how whenever you have a strategic plan, kind of the culture of your organization or your community is so important to being able to execute in that strategic plan. Like, what do you feel are like the mindset shifts that we need to kind of get to? Like, what are things in our culture that, you know, and I don't mean just within the personnel culture, but I mean in our broader community around, you know, is it growth mindset or is it kind of adaptability, or what are the mindsets that like we need to foster? Because I think that's something that we can all, if we have that as kind of our guiding big picture role, that's like, we can all do that. Again, I'm thinking about like free stuff, right? Yeah. This is more like, how do you approach your job, and is it, you know, are you disclosing information? Are you really engaging your customer, right? I hate to use that word, but like, are you engaging that person to really get them to hear to feel the information you're trying to give to them?
So I'm going to give it a shot first, and then I'm going to let Superintendent Euster take it home after that. But I think that a couple of mind shifts that I would say, and I think it was clear in this presentation, but I'll lay it out. Systems of support, and we need to move to this concept that our schools are a system, and that they're not individual schools, and they're not individual programs, and these are not individual interventions that we can, you know, evaluate by themselves. It's about how all of these things fit together, how we move students in and out. And I think that's why I took the risk of putting MTSS in a board presentation in June, because it's that important. The idea that it's about a system of support, and that's something that we need to articulate to the community at large. The other piece is a word I just said, which is communication. And I think that that's integral to the way that we look at the multi-tiered systems of support also. So I think that shifting from thinking about the services that we provide as individual services or metrics as individual metrics, but rather that they're all just little parts of a big puzzle that's hard to see, and that when we notice that there's a low spot or a student section, subgroup, grade 3, 5, whatever it is, that's not performing. It's not about just asking, well, why is that one piece not working? It's about saying, well, how does this really fit in, and what are other questions we have, so we could understand the larger system. But I think that the communication piece is important, and that's why I think the idea about having the advisory committees, so that we can have these extended conversations, not just during LCAP time, but when we could say, we heard from you that there's concerns about safety and bullying. So let's have a committee and let's hear from you, and let's provide accessibility so that we can hear about it. We've heard that there's concerns about students with disabilities, and so let's pull you in and let's hear more about the big one, instruction. We know that there's a lot of concerns around that. How are we doing that? We already have our district English learner advisory committees, but we can do better at hearing about topics that people are telling us they want to talk to us about, not just in one meeting, but at length. And then the last one is the advisory committee on communication, which I think is, if I could just pick two, it would be the idea about systems and then the idea about communication and how we improve that communication in times of emergency, in times of struggle, in times of happiness and delight, and being able to tell everybody about the amazing things that we're doing. Oh, wow. I did it. Is that it?
Joy, thank you for all the hard work and your
Thank
great
you.
responses to the questions. Thank you. All right, so we'll continue on with reports, and we're going to receive a report regarding the 2018-2019 district budget. Crystal, welcome.
We feel like I should have chose a different side of the house, because no one ever gets that excited about numbers like I do. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about the 2018 and 19 budget, which is definitely not as exciting as some of the things Joy was asking us to do. To kind of continue off of that vein, how many hours go into the LCAP and into the budget, and that they happen to be at the same time, really causes a lot of longer days than normal. And then when you get word that they're trying to change the template yet again for next year, and then also to increase transparency, they're talking about actually limiting the amount of words that you actually put in the LCAP, so I'm not really sure where that's going to go, so we'll see how that happens next year. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so for our financial reports, we report our financials of the school district several times throughout the year. Most of the time, we're working in 2 fiscal years. Right now in June, we are looking at the adopted budget for the following fiscal of 18-19, while we're beginning the closeout stages of the 17-18, which is at this time called the estimated actuals. And then in September, I return to you to present the unaudited actuals. December, we discuss first interim report, the audit report, and then we move on to second interim, and then we start this cycle all over again. So a lot of changes happen throughout the year. The governor throughout the year, mainly in January and in May, provides an update on what's going on in the state as far as budget and how that trickles down to schools. And you can see that in just a very short time how things change. So in January, he was planning on 100% of the gap funding for LCFF, so we are at target. He was planning for 18-19, which happens to be 2 years earlier, which is wonderful. And then in May revised, that remained 100%, which is nice to see a number that remains consistent, because as you can see, the other 2 numbers do not. In 18-19, the COLA in January was 2.51. It's gone up. There's more revenue. This is good news for us. And then also, when there tends to be more revenue and it's not ongoing revenue, we tend to see that in the form of our one-time discretionary funds, which has gone up, about $50 from January. So the planning factors that go into the budget, of course, are the COLA. And now that we are at target, we will only receive increases per the COLA. So the LCFF gap funding is at 100% in 18-19. That's why you don't see any activity in 19-20 and 20-21. You can note the STRS and the PERS increases. The PERS increase in 18-19 is different than what was reported out at second interim, as PERS has the flexibility to increase those percentages as they see fit and per their actual study results. STRS is fixed until 21-22. The lottery remains the same, and again, the one-time discretionary funds and the mandate block grant. So these are kind of the planning factors that begin to start moving the factors in the budget. So with LCFF funding, you can see when we started this journey back in 12-13, our base entitlement, and then we have a little bit of property tax on there, and then we see a little bit of that target grant kind of growing until we reach full target. And you can see how the state aid changes from when we were basic aid to when we became LCFF funded. And then in 18-19, when we're fully at target, that's why 19-20 through 2021, you see that we're at the LCFF target. The 22-23 and on, they didn't provide data for that, so I think they're still thinking about what's going to happen in those out years. But we are at target, and we will only continue to grow revenue-wise by our COLA. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here. This is the multi-year projection, which covers 3 years. We're required to report 3 years, the current fiscal, and then the 2 subsequent fiscal years. So you can see our revenues and our expenditures and then our ending fund balance on this. It carries forward. I actually project about 5 years out, but I'm only required to report on 3. What is different in 2021 versus 18-19, even though we are at target, is about $300,000 less in revenue in 2021, and in 19-18 we're down about $200,000 in revenue. Most of that's done because of the COLA only, and then also because we are actually starting to enter into declining enrollment, and we have to start showing our projections with the declining enrollment of, we're starting out with about 50 students. Our ADA is funded on the greater of prior years, so whichever is higher is the year we get to capture and use for our funding. The PERS increases in the health and welfare costs, again, are higher in 18-19. In 17-18, usually I budget anywhere between 2 to 5% for health and welfare costs. In 17-18, they were 11% mid-year. So we are really trying to figure out a good way to be conservative enough, but trying to pinpoint how to project what is going on with the health and welfare. And then again with the STRS and PERS. So as you can see, there is some red at the bottom with our deficit. That's actually what our deficit is, the deficit spending. In 18-19, we are planned at budget, which is a very fluid document. It will change as we come to first interim. 18-19, we, as of today, are scheduled to finish with about a 7.8% reserve. In 18-19, we do not make our 3% reserve. We are at 2.52. And then in 2021 is when our parcel tax expires, and so I'm no longer able to show that revenue. However, we do still have those expenditures in the budget as they are tied to our program and our complete operational expenditures. In 2021, we are negative 5.3%. So we're not even on the positive side. We have a lot of hard work to do. We have a lot of activism to do to really try to generate some more funding at the state level, which they are looking at, which we hope to hear from in about 2 weeks or so. And then also our attempts to renew the parcel tax, which, as you can see, we so desperately need. So when we look at the historical funding and expenditures, you can see the revenue and expenditure. You see how balanced some years the budget is, and then other years when we have some increases. And when you look at 15-16, so 12 and 13 through 14-15, that's really minimal. Those are actually pretty good years for us. We had a lot of growth in revenue. 14-15 and 15-16 were our highest years in actually the growth in revenue for the LCFF formula. But you see our expenditures also grow. And the reason for those expenditures growing is not because we were receiving more money and we were increasing programs and doing all these wonderful things. They were for the unfunded mandates that we have that are really out of our control, and those are the STRS and PERS, and then also the health and welfare costs. Along with, we have a lot of programs now that we really have to look at the whole child, and we don't get any more funding to look at that. So as we deal with mental health and we increase the safety of our schools and we provide those additional resources, we have not received any additional funding to do those very necessary things. So again, this is another picture of the STRS and PERS. So what you see here is the growth from the prior year versus the revenue growth. So when you see the STRS and PERS in that mustardy color versus the revenue, the STRS and PERS increases for 18-19 outgrow the amount of revenue that we're getting. So as you can see, it just doesn't work, right? So those mandated funds that we have to pay for, we are not getting, that we can't set, there's no control over that. We are not getting enough revenue to even equal the amount of additional expenses that are going out. In 2021, the reason why that looks a little lower is because that's actually only PERS. STRS, the agreement with STRS expire in 2021, and so after 2021, in 21 and 22, they have the ability to fluctuate as they see fit. I did receive this afternoon some projections moving forward all the way up to 2046. I don't know how old I'll be in 2046.
Still 29.
I know, right? Always. And they do actually look like they're stabilizing, so I really hope that this burden that they put on districts is really going to pay off, and we actually can work with some reasonable percentages moving forward. So they really actually, they come down and they stay flat around 18%, and that's manageable.
Talking about the growth rate.
Yeah.
Growth rate.
The growth rate, yeah.
In 2046.
Yeah, 2046, they're still, yeah, so we'll see. We'll survive. We're okay. Probably still getting the same amount of revenue though. I don't see that changing. Okay, so again, just another view of how the district spends the funds. You know, you hear me say all the time that, you know, we have at least 80, 85%, sometimes 90, depending on the year, of our budget going to salaries and benefits. And so there's not a lot of room for growth. So we have a large part in services, and that services covers a ton of things. It's operational costs. It's also related to students as well. And then about 3% on books and supplies. So there's not a lot of room. And when I looked at this graph in a couple different ways, when I looked at it with the side of with revenue, it didn't represent well. I mean, it was like Pac-Man, and the salaries just eat up everything else that's within the pie. So things to remember, we have arrived at full LCFF implementation, but again, that's only at 07, 08 funding levels, and none of my expenses are at 07, 08 levels. Additional funding will be based on COLA. We have our automatic cost of pension mandates, health and welfare increases. Those are increasing on an average of 5% a year. Those are all still unfunded. And then this third bullet, you know, we get flooded so much by the news and articles that we read that, you know, the state is doing really well and they have all this revenue and schools are fully funded, and it's really just a misrepresentation of what is going on. You know, those revenues in the first quarter for California were so great because of the tax cuts for last year. Everybody shifted their revenue to the first quarter so they could benefit from the tax cuts from last year, which just inflates that first quarter and makes your revenues look higher, but it's not sustainable. So, and you can see that, you know, I'll get a month, well, you know, revenues exceeded target, revenues fell short, and it's just this constant up and down throughout the year. And then we try to kind of decipher that down to what it actually does and how it affects the district. So what we do have that's really important coming up is there's actually 2 assembly bills right now that I'm watching very closely, and that's AB 2808 and AB 3136. So AB 2808 is the bill that raises the target amount. So it's like for estimates, if we're funded about $6,500 per child, we would get like 11,000. So that is a huge amount of an increase. It won't come all at once. If it comes, they'll do another 5-year plan to roll that out, but we'll take what we can get. And then AB 3136 is related to the special education funding. That really is to increase all of the special ed programs that are going across the state and that continue to go unfunded. So we are watching these. We hope to have some information June 15th. They have to be able to send the governor the final budget for him to sign by June 30th. So we'll see what happens, and then we'll get our next update. And again, I touched when I first started talking about, you know, the budget and how the LCAP is so connected, and they are. You know, we try to provide all this fiscal transparency, and we account for it in the budget, which obviously the public doesn't see, but you have in your folders. That's a 150-page document, and then we have the LCAP, which is a 150-page document, and the numbers do tie together, and it does take several hours. I have a great staff that helps support me and get me through this really difficult time. So hopefully the next time I'm standing in front of you, I can say we're getting some more money. Any questions?
I've got a comment, just a quick one. You can sit down, it's fine. Yeah, this, obviously we want everybody to get their pensions and what they've contracted for and deserve, but, so there's nothing about that, but the state has got to find a way to help districts compensate for that in the funding. So hopefully the legislators will do their job and find a way to bring funds for us, because otherwise, to the public, this is a pretty cataclysmic conversation we just had, if you didn't catch that. We're talking multi-million-dollar shortfalls and not meeting basic requirements for reserves. So not insignificant. So Crystal, we will look forward to maybe some positive news. And so everybody, talk to your elected officials and representatives for the state as well. That's all part of the process. So thanks.
Just second that, it's really truly shameful we have to have this conversation at all. Living in the 5th largest economy and fairly, I would say, relative terms, wealthy state, to have conversations where our revenues are so outpaced by our expenditures, and most of it, the vast majority of it being outside of our control, is just shameful. I can't think of another word for it. And I know, having gone through the details in this budget, there is no fat. There's no fat to trim here. This is, doing the bare bones of what we need to do. Treating our employees well, I think is obviously a priority, and we've done as much as we can around that. Wish we could do more, on all fronts and new initiatives and all that. Thank you for, I know it's hard work. I've in my corporate life lived under fairly comfortable circumstances and lived through the kind of other end of that spectrum when you need to really tightly manage fewer dollars. It takes 10 times as much effort to figure out how to spend those $10 instead of those $15. So I know the level of effort it takes to try to constantly think about what can we do better, how can we do more for less, and the amount of energy and creativity and time that it takes to do that is just highly appreciated. So thank you so much for all you guys are doing and working, your collaboration together to think about how do we still use our funds, our limited funds strategically to really accomplish what we're trying to do here for our students every day. It's kind of back to those shifts of what we talked about, that collaboration, that spirit of collaboration, and thank God we have that here. And I feel like despite the challenges we have, we're really fortunate to have a team that's working through and just have that can-do spirit, and we do as much as we can with what we have. So I'm really grateful for that, although the state situation sucks. I hope it gets better. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's unfortunate and shameful, the situation at the state level. But thank you so much for working together so positively and so collaboratively and so strategically to do the best that we can with what we have. So thank you, everybody.
All right, so we'll move on to discussion items. So we are going to have actually 3 public hearings. So Patty, I'll just open a public hearing on the LCAP, right? We're going to open a public hearing for the 2018-2019 Local Control Accountability Plan. And I'll ask for any comments from the public. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We'll move on to B, conduct a public hearing on proposed 2018-2019 district budget. And I'll open that for comment. Any comments? No comments, so I will close that public hearing. We'll move on to C, conduct public hearing for reading of statement of reasons for excess reserves. And I will open that hearing. Looking for any comments? Nobody? All righty. We'll close that public hearing. Thank you for that relative to the discussion items. We will move on now to communications. I'll start to my left. Kim, are you interested in sharing with anything today?
Sure.
Okay.
So one of the highlights in the last month was attending the 44th Annual Arts and Sciences Day at El Granada Elementary.
44th annual.
The 44th Annual. And some of the highlights were seeing a boa constrictor and fiber optics and photosensitive paper artwork. Some, was it 23 workshop? I don't know. Lots of workshops and choices. And the treat for me was I didn't volunteer for just a single workshop, and usually I'm in one. When I volunteered in the past, I was in one. So I went around and saw a number of the different presentations, and the caliber of these presentations was amazing. Going back to the point of engagement and enrichment, asking a child or a parent what they want, there are times when a child or a parent has no way to conceive something they've never experienced. And what a gift that the community of parents and teachers pulls together this wide array of high caliber presentations. So just an excellent example, and I was so proud to be part of that. And there was a really nice article in the paper too. So another piece to reflect on in the last month is Measure M. And I know Freya and Rob will have more accurate information, and it's going to be later before we have the final report on outcome. But interacting with the public around our budget, to me, was very insightful. Because every time I encountered a question, I had people asking really good, intelligent questions, and people from our retired community. But then I go back and I dig, and they asked about, what about the lottery dollars? Well, that's a very small fraction of our overall budget. And yes, there's restricted and unrestricted funds in the lottery. And even the unrestricted can cover everything related to education expenses except facilities. So when you start to dive into our budgets, again, it's kudos to Crystal for tracking all of this, but we have so many restrictions on all of these different line items that roll into the budget. So in terms of absorbing learning curve for myself as a board member in the last 18 months, I really have the utmost respect for all of our district administration and what you guys put together. And I know at the heart of it, you do have kids' interests in mind, even though I nitpick on NAPA and things like that. But thank you very much.
Kirk?
First of all, I wanted to thank Rob and Freya for their efforts in working on Measure M. This has been a lot of heavy lifting for 6 months, 9 months, a year.
Wow.
Seems like forever, I bet. And I really appreciate the effort you've made. And on behalf of that, and in service to the board and the district, having had the opportunity to interact with the public in the campaign process by canvassing and phone calling and all, I have to say that, well, it's certainly disenchanting and painful at times to hear how readily members of the public jump to the assumption that an entity such as a public school district is expected to be or anticipated to be or assumed to be, mishandling the funds we work with and in the work we do. And how readily people come to that assumption on the basis of little evidence, and despite our tremendous efforts to communicate what we do and remain transparent in our operations, it seems like quite a strong wind of opposition, and it would be nice if there was a way to cut through that, but facts don't seem to change a lot of that. And it's just, we don't know the fate of Measure M. It's not looking real great. Maybe we'll have a pleasant surprise in the next few days. But it's a tremendous effort, and I think we have a lot of support, but the people that don't support seem to be very readily wanting to assume that we're just not doing things right. And it's tough. It's tough to be able to try to communicate the ways in which we are doing right, besides what we do every day to try to communicate this. And those are my thoughts at this time. Thank you.
Thanks. Ray?
So first off, I want to thank all the principals and the teachers. I did my school site visits, although I'm still hoping to make it to Pilarcitos. Raj will hopefully set something up next week, and I didn't make it to Kings Mountain because of a family health issue, but maybe I'll set that up as well. But it's just such a pleasure to chat with the principals. It's the second time in the year that I've done that, and just have an individual conversation, and also to sit in the lunchrooms and talk to teachers and staff who want to come in, and I provide goodies, so that helps a little bit. And just chat about, sometimes it's about school or curriculum or other related issues, and sometimes it's just about life or Measure M or other things that are happening. So thank you to all the teachers and staff and to the principals for allowing me to continue to do that. And then also the opportunity to host with Sophia, thank you for providing your home, the meeting of the PTO presidents from all the different schools, and this was started a couple of years ago with Kate Livingston and I. And I think that it's really exciting to see that it's grown. We're talking about doing it more than twice a year now. This last year we did it twice, and then also did a budget meeting with Crystal and some of her staff, which I think was very helpful. And so we're talking about the expansion of that, and so that was a really wonderful meeting. And then I wanted to say congratulations to Cesar and thank you for your hard work on the board. Really appreciate your attendance and your spirit, and congratulations on receiving the Spirit Award. And it was really wonderful seeing all the different kinds of awards. Of course, we honored our valedictorian and salutatorian tonight, but there were many other awards that were given that night, and you really deserve the Spirit Award. Even the way in which you accepted it up on the stage that night was wonderful. So good luck to you at San Francisco State. I think you'll love it. And when I went today to get some of your little goodies there, it's a wonderful place, and I think you'll really have a great time. So look forward to hearing about all the exciting things you'll do. So thank you for that. And I just want to say thank you to Rob for doing a lot of heavy work on the Measure M campaign, and to our two co-chairs, Katie and Jackson, who put a lot of work, as well as to our consultants and all of the volunteers that came out to phone bank and precinct walk and do lots of work. And I also want to say thank you to the 54% at this point who did vote yes on Measure M. I really appreciate that support. And I say that to my daughter, and she says, well, I don't understand, why didn't we win? That's over 50%. I go, I know, that's the way it works. It's called a supermajority. We had to get 55. We are currently 40 votes down from that 55%. And their numbers could change. They might not as well, but I just want to say thank you to all of those who did make that vote, cast that vote. And of course, there's many reasons when you look back in terms of all-male elections, voter turnout, other kinds of issues that came up. So, but yes, we move forward, and we take that 54% that does support what we're trying to do, as well as all the hard work that we do every day, and we figure out what to do next and how to continue to make things happen. It's the lesson that we talk about teaching our children every day, the perseverance, when something doesn't succeed, you get up and figure out how to find another solution. So I'm sure that we'll be having that conversation in the future as well. But thank you all.
Thanks, Ray. Sophia?
I'll just start with Measure M again. Thank you all who are participating, Rob, Freya, Jackson, Katie, the countless others who were working hard, pounding the pavement, trying to gain support, and the 54% of people that did step up. And despite all the imperfections and all the challenges that we face in our world, really kind of stepped above all that to do what's right for our kids. It has been, of course, a little disheartening, as Kirk said. I think your words resonated with me, to feel like kind of was hoping we could do better, right? I was hoping we can get past this divisiveness that's blossomed in our country right now, and this easy, quick to point fingers, quick to make assumptions about anything government related must be bad, anything that is complex or I don't understand must be bad or must be wrong. I was really, really hoping we could get past that, and I think it's a challenge for all of us, and any role that we have in this community, being in a formal leadership role, or be it, just walking by somebody in the street, to kind of how do we bring ourselves together, and how do we think about the bigger picture of the broader community. And it's, again, the mind shifts of like kind of me and myself and my world and the bigger us, right? So I have hope. I see this every day here in our schools, countless ways, thinking about all the events. I'm always at Hatch, of course. Not only the fabulous Hatch, the luncheon, and it was just delicious. The Hatch ELAC, like many of the ELACs, put on luncheons for the teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week, and it was like amazing. And also just that feeling of the sincere gratitude on both sides, right? Of like just feeling like when we're in this together, we'll do our best. We make it happen. It's not going to be a transformational change or transformational improvement. Usually these improvements or progress are incremental, but it's there. The spirit's there, and it gives me hope that we can get past these things. The reclassification ceremony, at Hatch, also similarly, where we're celebrating this hard work of our kids and our families and our teachers, step by step by step. It's progress, and that's how we get there. I got to spend some time at El Granada this month too, which is fantastic. I think I was there twice in 1 week, both for the Assembly of Better Me, which was fantastic, to have these folks from the Kaiser Family Foundation run around like fruits and vegetables and different things, and like it was just a really engaging way to like have kids learn about eating, about healthy habits, and how to be their best selves. And also the Arts and Sciences Day, fantastic, and I feel like so much good stuff going on. The marijuana education event from the high school, also let's just again, that lack of fear in tackling these issues that we know are out there. Okay, let's get in front of them, and let's make sure that we are supporting our kids as life evolves around them, right? And yeah, fantastic meeting with the PTO heads again. To see that energy and spirit from these folks was awesome, and to feel like, okay, good, we want to do more and work together and share best practices and streamline our fundraising and share ideas about how to foster the sense of inclusion in our schools around all our family groups, was really inspiring. So I do have hope. We're making progress here and there, and hopefully we can kind of do that across our community. So, thank you.
Thank you. I will focus on just a couple of joyful things that happened. I had the opportunity to officiate the Los Listos preschool promotion/graduation at Hatch a few days back, and the kids were just so adorable and joyful, and the families were so proud. So I was very fortunate to get a few hugs and some high fives and some handshakes, and it was just a great reminder of why we run campaigns and talk about all caps and finances and all that sort of stuff. So that was fantastic. The second one, Mr. Reardon, attended the art show. I was just stunned by the skills of your students and what you've taught them, painting and sculpture, and just some folks who just have some gifts that they certainly could be professional if that's what they choose to do. And everywhere I turned, I was pleased, and the parents that were there and the other folks, everybody was talking about what you've brought to these kids that they'll carry with them for a lifetime. So thank you for that. I did attend the marijuana cannabis education session, which was initially was put together by the Health and Wellness Committee at the high school initially. So John, thanks for your leadership and involvement there. And it was a great dialogue where we had there was a psychologist there, Dr. O, who was fantastic and really, and it was probably about 100 people in the room. It was at the middle school. Help you get inside the head of teen kids and what they're dealing with, and the pressures and how they operate and how they make decisions, and that was fantastic. And there was a person who was formerly an addict to marijuana, in his words, 28 years sober, but how that affected his life, and he's out doing education now as well. And then Mr. Barnes was there sharing some of the different paraphernalia and things that, the miniaturization, electronicization of jeweling, those sorts of things, and the impact there. And then Rick Walczek was there from talking about the city's perspective, and of course there was a big meeting on that this week. But ultimately, it was just another example of how having open dialogue and education and speaking openly and, can benefit the community. In fact, I took some of that stuff home, and I have a couple of teens, and not prone to talking about it, but I kind of built this story about what happened there, and I said, "Oh, did you know this, or did you know that?" And it was like, "Oh, I didn't. Oh, no, I didn't know that." And it was, but as a non-combative, not really kind of non-judgmental way of having a discussion. And I think as we continue this communication process, which I know we'll have to both at the middle school certainly and at the high school, I think that's the kind of scenario and culture that will foster people listening and kids listening, because I know it's hard to get them to listen. I don't have to tell you educators about that. And then lastly, about the bond, I still feel encouraged. There's probably 300 to 500 votes still out there, so maybe we can make that up. And if we didn't, we learned lessons that we'll utilize in future campaigns, because there's still more work to be done both in the facilities and certainly with the budget, as Crystal pointed out. But I want to thank Katie Ashero and Jackson Robertson, who co-chaired and stepped up, and so many volunteers, my partner in crime, Freya, but lots of people who walked neighborhoods and got on the phone. But ultimately, we need more people to get involved, and I know everybody gets so busy, and I can appreciate that. But there is nothing, and I tell my kids this all the time, there's nothing more gratifying to just getting involved, connecting with people, and making a difference, and not just standing by and watching things happen. People have got to participate, and I hope come November elections, everybody who's ready to vote takes the time to do it. That's the only way we're going to have change in this country that many of us want. So that's it for me. So I will pass the baton. No, wait, let me go to my agenda. Yes, I am right. Cesar, it's all yours.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Before I start, I just want to mention that we have our future board member. Welcome. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Lauren DeBose. So I'm going to be a junior next year at the high school. And like Cesar said, I'll be the new student board representative. I'm super excited to be working with you all next year.
Welcome, Lauren. We're excited as well.
Thank you.
I just want to let you guys know that she's a hard worker, and I'm really proud of her to be in my spot, so congrats.
Full approval from you, Cesar?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have a couple reports. I just want to say thank you again for the gifts and for letting me know everything about how everything's going in the community. I feel really connected now, growing up as a person, starting from kindergarten, going to the high school. It's pretty intense, and I'm happy that I went through the whole process and things changed, and it's going great. So let me start off the report by starting with Kings Mountain. So the cold, foggy weather did not dampen Kings Mountain school spirit at Open House, a celebration of fine arts, performing arts, and science, Thursday, May 24th. Families mingled and ate Jaime's tacos, while viewing students' art on display outside of the classroom. Superintendent Euster came to bundled in school spirit, wearing a Kings Mountain sweatshirt to enjoy the celebration. Performances began at 6 p.m. with Miss P.S. leading the 5th grade band. The 5th graders then performed skits about their environmental action research on invasive species with messages of prevention. Then it was off to the classrooms where teachers and students welcomed friends and families to share their hard work. The evening was capped with an ice cream social served with are Kings Mountain School student alumni. This is the second year 5th graders and the principal, Diane, hiked at Parissima Creek Trail to Higgins Canyon Road, known as the 5th grader mountain to coast hike on June 1st, and ending with a pizza party in Half Moon Bay. This year, Principal Fieldman joined the Kings Mountain 5th graders for pizza and questions about Cunha. It was wonderful meeting Mr. Fieldman and familiar faces, knowing they will be welcoming their fellow Kings Mountain Elementary friends in the fall at Cunha. It's like God's hitting me. I'm like almost done. The busy end to the school year continues with a fun run, carnival, and finally graduation. Ooh, 2 more reports. Okay, so now it's Fairlawn View. The Extended Academic Center at Fairlawn View is most grateful for having been recognized by the San Mateo County School Boards Association Kent Award. This after-school program serves 50 English learners of struggling readers by providing targeted additional support in English language development. We were also one of the 4 finalists for the Excellence Award. On a separate note, we would like to report that we had a dozen of marine science events during Oceans Week and absolutely enjoyed having a super well-attended open house. We are currently making preparations for our 5th grade promotion ceremony on June 13th. Now one more report, which is the high school one. Half Moon Bay had a foundation fundraiser, which was the Color Run. The Color Run was well attended and brought joy to our community. On May 23rd, we had our department's award to honor those students who have been involved and show skills in the departments, for example, math, English, and much more. On May 24th, Half Moon Bay High School students went down to Cunha to the Youth Summit, which allows future high schoolers to see an interest in clubs and was basically a small goodbye now that they are becoming young adults. A week later, we had our yearly local scholarship to help seniors who applied for the scholarship. Huge thanks to the people in our community who were able to make this happen. On June 1st, we had our yearbook assembly, which announces awards, cords, and future ASB students. During lunch and after school, the yearbooks were distributed, which allows everybody to see the whole school year in one book. Huge congrats to our future president, Sophia Papalardo, our vice president, Jerica Diaquisto, secretary, Jill Hicon, treasurer, Christian Alvarez, and student board representative, Lauren DuBose. On June 4th, our peer helper class had their presentations, which included topics like emotions, resilience, mental health, and diversity. Thanks to all the peer helpers for working on these presentations all semester, and for those who stood up and spoke with a voice. On that same day, we had Class of the Year, which was won by the senior class. We had ice cream, pizza, and even a pool party. The seniors have been taking finals, and tomorrow is the final day. Congrats to the class of 2018, and good luck on your last finals. Next week, the rest of the school will be taking finals, while the seniors practice for graduation, Great America, and relax. Finally, graduation will be on June 14th. Thanks.
Superintendent communication.
So I've had a great time attending all of the open houses, and it was freezing at Kings Mountain. The hoodie was really necessary. It was great school spirit, but it was cold up there. But I had a great time also at El Granada. If you haven't checked out their ice cream social that goes down over open house, that place was packed, and the ice cream area, congratulations Martha, very efficient. You got your sundae, you got out of there, it was great. Fairlawn View, had a great time, run around talking to teachers and visiting with my favorite guy, Bob, up there, which is a snake, by the way. And then down to Hatch, and Hatch's open house is much earlier, which it makes it, it's a little challenging for me because generally I'm doing 2 or 3 of these in a single night. but this year Hatch spaced out, and it was very nice, so I wasn't running quite as badly. And then down to the high school awards ceremony, we awarded $190,000 in scholarships this year.
Awesome.
And that is up from 183,000 last year. We just keep going up. So the incredible generosity of this community towards its young scholars is remarkable. I then went back to the high school for the awards ceremony Friday morning, and they have a tradition, I believe John tells me it's the oldest tradition in the high school, which is the awarding of the braids for students who are second or third or fourth generation in the high school. There were so many students this year that literally they could have gone around the entire gymnasium. It was just an incredible thing to see. The earliest class of, I believe, was 1930 was represented in 4 generations, great-grandparents, 4 generations across. If you've never been to that ceremony, it's amazing. That's where I found out about the 41 weighted 4.0 averages, the Spirit Award, the ASB, new ASB president, and by the way, I should warn you, the gavel they gave her is about that big around. So I don't know what's going on there, but it is one big mother gavel. I don't think I've ever seen one quite that big. And now with unbelievable excitement, I think Sean Reardon says it very well, with tears of sadness, but with unreal excitement, we come to what we live for as teachers and educators. We send you on, and we send all of our children on, and up through these grade systems with our celebrations at our elementaries, our promotions through our junior high school, and our graduations from both our alternative and our comprehensive high school. I'm going to kind of let one little cat out of the bag, that our alternative high school will have its highest graduation rate ever this year, so congratulations, Raj.
Great news.
And the high school is also going to have an unbelievably high graduation rate as well. It's a time of great celebration. I will be at the junior high and the intermediate school, and you can tell how old I am right away by just the choice of words here. And the high schools, I don't promise that I won't cry at some point, but it's an amazing thing, and truly, it's what we live for as educators. Those moments that you are walking the stage, parents are loving it, everybody's photographing, but the educators are just, we can't stand it, because that's why we were put on the face of this earth, was to make these things happen. So congratulations, graduates. Congratulations to all of our students and our teachers, and have a wonderful, wonderful, restful summer.
Thanks, Jane. All right, we'll move on to consent items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
And a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay, we will move on to action items then. 15A is approved proposed English Language Arts textbook adoption at Cunha Intermediate. Joy, you can speak to that?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
me. So,
Yes, it is.
last month, we brought you the proposed English Language Arts textbook adoption, and we're bringing it back for the second reading today. And we ask for your approval so that we can move forward with this really amazing adoption. Our teachers have stayed this whole time, so let's not disappoint.
Bless you. Bless you. Thank you. All right. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Give me a second.
Second.
All right. Any comments or questions anybody wants to ask from last time? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Glad you stayed.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Is it worth it?
All right.
Yes.
Yes. All right, in a similar vein, B, we're going to approve proposed mathematics textbook adoption for all elementary schools.
Yes, so we brought that to you last month, and this month we're bringing it back for a second reading for The approval of bridges and mathematics for our elementary schools.
Motion to approve. Thank you. And a second? All righty. Any comments, questions before we go? Nope. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, 5-0. It's approved. Joey, thanks for all your hard work. All right, we have a resolution. Adopt resolution number 10-18, designation of specific material, product, thing, or service for a construction contract. That just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
Crystal,
Can you
yeah,
say
it
that
does,
3
yeah.
times
Yeah.
at almost 9:30 at night?
We need an acronym for that. That's what we need.
Oh, Kirk's on that. Dr. Reno, get on that acronym. Okay, so tonight I bring you the resolution that I ask you to adopt. Public contract code allows districts in specific instances to designate a specific material or product. When something is sole source, that's the identification of a sole source product. All bidders and respondents to any bids or projects or RFPs have to identify this specific product within their documents and price that out. So tonight I bring you a resolution for the district to adopt a sole source to explore the specific material of the one-story folia structure, which is the structure that we have chosen to move forward for Hatch Phase 4 for the kinder units, and then and possibly into some of our other elementary schools.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All right, thank you. Any questions for Crystal? Oh, it's a roll call. Oh, it's a roll call. I apologize. Yeah.
Do we have questions first?
Yeah.
So this isn't, this is a type of a product?
Yes,
Not a
so there,
specific brand?
this is a specific brand of a folia is the product. It is a modular product. What makes this different than other products and allow us to sole source is that it's also built to order. So there are far more custom options than like our JLM buildings that we have at Pillarcitos and some of the other modular units. And because of the way that it's built, you get the flexibility without the cost.
So this was, how many vendors are there for this specific type of product?
So there is one specific vendor, so the manufacturer is Folia, and then the general, so we identify that Folia is the type of building that we want to use, and then any general contractor that we work with would have to install, the architect would identify that the building that the district has chosen, and then the general contractor would work the project and install that building.
So your reason for choosing it is flexibility?
Is flexibility, cost, and really the flexibility of being able to create, especially in our kinder classrooms, the type of environment that we want. And as we move forward, as far as like as much lighting as we want, open doors, like whole window doors, and a lot more flexibility with the size, rather than the pre-manufactured modular buildings.
How will it look on the site with the other, the new construction at Hatch? You're gonna plant these buildings here, they're gonna look different than?
They'll be the same color, they'll fit in, they have the same roof, not the same ski loaf roof line, but it will blend in and fit, yes, and fit very nicely. Aesthetically, it will blend, yes. And then we have the option, so like these are buildings that you can't really connect, they just come in straight. So these buildings, they can be done in Ls, they can be done in Us, there's all kinds of different options. Like where you place the playground and so forth.
Has it been made for a lot of years, or is it?
So they currently make 2 stories, and that's what they're known for. And then they are starting to explore into the 1 story, and so the district also will be kind of their example site for the 1 story as well.
So, am I correct? I was reading in section 2, it said that it was the only acceptable material, product, or thing because we'd be conducting a field test. So this was like, we're gonna get 1 so it can be assessed, and and evaluated, and then that would.
It could become the district standard.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that it comes across as it's not like, this is not like a trial. This is like, it's going to be a fabulous kinder complex, just with more options, because this is when we look at like Pillar Cedos, those are great, but it's more like for high school. And we want something that's a little bit more friendly, that we can really make a kinder complex.
Okay.
You mentioned cost savings. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Not yet, because I'm still working with that, with Superintendent Euster on the design.
Got it. But that's part of Foley's
Yes, it is.
story?
Yes,
is that-
absolutely. Because the more add-ons and the changes that you make with other modular manufacturers, with the windows and certain lightings that we want, and especially with these having bathrooms in the classrooms and so forth, because they're kinders, the cost tends to go up there. So this kind of scales that back down. They're able to, because there's so many options, they're more inclined and able to stay within our budget.
Okay.
So can I just clarify the decision we're making is to move forward with this without, like, because this is the product that we want and they're the only ones that make it, and is that okay? That's our decision?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to understand, and without all the acronyms and many words, what we're deciding. Thank you.
Some good-looking schools on their website. Just took a quick peek. All right, so we are at a motion and a second. So we're going to have a roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 5-0. All righty, we are going to hold another public hearing for 2019-2021 contract initial proposals and approve as submitted by the California School Employees Association and the Cabrillo Unified School District. So I'm going to open a public hearing to that effect. And any comments? From no one, no comments? Okay, we will close that. That's it, Patty? That's all that's
Yeah, that's
necessary?
it.
Okay, we'll close that public hearing. And 15E, approve Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board Policy.
Approve assumption. You do the public hearing, but you also still need to approve.
It's an action item.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Patty, I'm always happy you're here, thank you. All right, so do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Kirk, second. All right. Not a roll call, all in favor? Aye. All right, there you go, 6-0. All right, now we will move on to 15E. I'll repeat, approve Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board Policy updates and adopt the proposed revisions as recommended by the CSBA. Jane, are you going to share with us on this?
Yep. There's a bunch of them coming both now and later in the month. There is a great deal of action taking place with the new laws that California has enacted to protect the rights of our immigrant students. And what you see in the changes in these board policy reflects that new law. These are both recommended by the California School Boards Association, and San Mateo County Council has had a look at these as well, because this is a shifting territory. This law literally has just been enacted, and yet we are required to be in compliance by August. There are more than 25 board policies that are going to have to change in the next month and a half, and we got them all done. You'll see the second half of them all in front of you by the end of this month, but we are heavily focused on two major areas to protect the rights of all of our students in these policies and reflect through there, and also to bring our safety plans and things updated for the latest in the Big Five and the requirements of the state on making sure that a safety plan, while it certainly talks about ingress and digress out of the schools, the egress, out of the schools, really the primary focus of a safety plan is that this never ever happens. And the analysis of data that goes into it. Those plans will be, what we have to grapple through in this board policy starts to address is what parts of the plan are public, what parts of the plan are not so public. It's quite obvious that we're not going to start publishing here. If you pull our fire alarms, this is where all our kids are gonna go. But we do have disclosure that is required, and all of us are grappling with this, and you see in these board policies, the beginning of how do we ensure all of our children are safe at all times, even with our safety plans in place. So that is what these policies are addressing this time.
Thanks, Jane, very important. Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Sophia, second? Or Kim? Kim. Kim, second, all right. Any further questions or comments from the board members?
I just noticed it was safety, but then also personnel, in terms of just giving, was that expanding what you can do?
So there's a lot of, there's safety with kids here. There's also some serious updating on personnel. It's not new law in personnel. We're just behind due to unfortunate circumstances and, of course, the death of our pupil and personnel assistant superintendent. A lot of updating just hasn't happened to reflect the changes in law. And so I'm also pleased to tell you that that's all now cleaned up. Patty has just been feeding it to me. That's what I've been shoving at you all year long, is to bring we have a, Jason is here, and the poor guy does not need to walk into a pile of, guess what, your board policies are all out of date. So we are pleased that we are now at fully updated and in compliance with federal standard.
Great, all in favor? Aye. All right, 6-0. Okay, let's move on to future board agenda items. Approve adoption of the LCAP at the next board meeting. Approve adoption of the 2018-2019 district budget. And C is ongoing policies, monthly maintenance update revisions. We're partway through, we'll get them in the next meeting. All kinds of great events coming up. We've got at June 13th, the Pilarcitos High School graduation ceremony at 10 a.m. at Pilarcitos. June 13th, the Fairlawn View Elementary School 5th promotion ceremony. I did that one last year. That is an awesome event. Very personalized to each kid. June 13th again, Cunha Intermediate School 8th grade promotion ceremony at 6. June 14th is the El Granada 5th grade promotion. That'll be at 8 a.m. first thing. June 14th, Hatch 5th grade promotion at 9 a.m. Also on the 14th, Kings Mountain 5th grade promotion, 10 a.m. And, I flipped. I was commenting about Kings Mountain, and I was saying Fairlawn. Sorry, guys. And June 14th, Half Moon Bay High School graduation ceremony, 6:30, be at that one. June 14th, very exciting, last day of school. And June 21st, we'll be back at it again with another board meeting. We are going to go back to closed session, so do a motion to extend past curfew if necessary. And second? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, lovely. All right, so we're going to return to closed session and adjourn the meeting. Thanks for everybody for staying with us tonight.